All right, welcome everyone back to our podcast. Beautiful, beautiful Every Nation podcast. We should talk. We've been busy with talking about authentic church community. Part of this authentic church community, we actually broke it up into three. We spoke about authenticity concerning individuals, what it means in the bigger picture, and I guess in a way saying that it is almost impossible to really be authentic because we're always hiding. We're always trying to put on a mask. We're always trying to cover up ourselves. We're always trying to portray or shine something that we're not. We're always trying to put on a face for everyone. Hence that beautiful saying, to save face. And then we spoke about community and what that means. Community is a tough one because we as a Western society actually kick against community. Community is not an easy thing. We all as individuals want to do our own thing, run our own thing, especially people from South Africa, people from the West, Western minds, Western thinking. It's always tough. And so community is something that doesn't come as naturally as we might think. You might have heard that saying that says, it takes a village to raise a child. And that's such a beautiful thing to say. But go look at if that's true. Go look at a family and tell me if that's true. Have you ever seen somebody else give your child a hiding and you're okay with it? Not so much. And so we love to say that saying, meaning my child will be loved by everyone, but part of being a family, part of being raised is actually discipline. And we always reserve that for mom and dad exclusively. And so, once again, another thing that we struggle with, community. And so the third thing that we're talking about is church, which is that one right in the middle of the saying, authentic church community. And as we'll listen now, it's a tough one because it's not that easy to really jump into it. With me, I almost want to say with me in studio.
Yeah.
It
would sound cool.
Like we're super professional. We're super professional. Don't judge us.
Yeah, in
with
studio.
Me, yes, with me in studio is AJ Meyer. Hello, AJ.
Lekker, how's it, man?
Lekker, good to have you here. It's amazing to have another person here. We're actually recording on a Friday, and so like a weekend. I don't know when you are listening to this now, but for us, we are in all weekend vibes, talking about church. So to give you a little background about AJ is a Christian, a churchgoer, a leader in church. He is married, no kids yet. He works full-time as and I don't want to maybe go there, but it's not an HR consultant. It's in HR. Maybe I'll give you a moment, and you can just maybe rephrase what you're doing. And so he's not in full-time ministry, but in and out of church. In his pursuit to God, he has been in more churches than most average people. And maybe AJ, you can tell us a bit later just what that looked like. He is a musician. Bass player, whoop whoop to all the Blaze players.
Yes.
The Blaze players.
The Blaze players. Blaze, how are you?
The Blaze players out there. That is such a funny thing. In church, you always struggle to get a drummer and to get a bass player. Mm-hmm. But in our church, we already have 4 drummers and 4 bass players, which is just ridiculous. But he's one of our bass players in church, and that's great. And there's a lot that he brings to the table as well. Maybe, AJ, over to you. Just in short, who are you? Yes.
Lekker, so you pretty much covered a lot of it already. So what I do from an occupational point of view is my job title says I'm an HR business partner, and what that means is I work for a consultancy firm. I'm an associate in the firm. So within the firm, I have got my client base that I look after. Well, it's all of our clients. But I plug in as an HR business partner to companies who doesn't have an HR department. Because nowadays, HR is no longer a person, it is a department, because there's truly a lot of work to do. And so I would say that I'm pretty much a full-time problem solver, but not through me being cool. I take people's problems and I attempt to fix it and to solve it for them. So that's what goes on for a majority, of a day. But also, why I am in HR is I've got a passion for people. I like working with people. I like engaging in conversations. I like seeing people progress through life. From not just being an employee, but also people in general, friends, our fellow church, spiritual family. I love people. I'm a massive extrovert. We did the personality test. I believe it was called the ISDN personality test. So it ranks you out of 25, introvert, extrovert. I was 1 introvert, 24 extrovert. So
Awesome.
quite extreme. So when I have my recharge moments, it's probably like half a morning, and then I'm good to go again. Just gathering my own thoughts. But anyway, in a nutshell, love people, and I love spending time with people. Yeah, I drive my wife crazy sometimes because I just can't stop talking.
That's beautiful.
And that's usually late at night when it's already bedtime. I'm like, hey, so anyway, just a quick one. And then you get that SpongeBob 2 hours later, and we're still busy chatting. Yeah.
That's great. So that's why you did a stint in radio as well.
Yeah, attempted to. Well, I've always wanted to. And then actually what was funny is I went to go see them to be like, hey, you've got people, you need HR. And he turned it around and, hey, we've got HR, I need you on radio. So it was quite funny to give that feedback to the other people in our company as well, to say, listen, guys, so had a prospect meeting. Instead, they offered me something.
There we go.
So, yeah, tried that out. Started in the late nights, the graveyard shifts, which was quite, well, I guess it's not really the graveyard shift, but when I'm 30 years old, 9 to 11 at night is a graveyard shift. So, yeah, did that. Was quite fun on a Lekker Afrikaans community station. Hopefully again in the future. Yeah.
Is it because of your voice? Does somebody go and he listens to AJ and he's like, yes.
100%. I've got the best voice. No, I'm kidding. But that was truly what the guy said. I sent him a voice note and he was like, I listened to your voice again and I don't know why I haven't thought about this years ago, but you need to be on radio. So please come for a vocal test.
So what does that mean? Does it mean that some certain people can be on radio and certain people...
Yes. That's
Was
the
that your-
truth. Yeah.
That's your radio, yes.
I want,
Yes.
yeah. Yes. So there is a couple of things that they listen to. So I was privileged enough to listen to some of the other vocal things that come in as well. And some of it was truly like, 3 hours of this. I don't know. But also, you need to be humble because I don't know what I sound like. I'm only going to listen to this when this comes out. So I hope it sounds good.
You sound like Sean Connery, bro. Don't worry. Money penny.
Oh, classic.
That's great.
Okay.
I always wondered in radio. So there was a guy I knew, older gentleman, and he had a voice, but he had like this deep voice. And I always thought if you've really got a deep voice, then that's like radio's for you. And then the other day I started listening to some of the it's not community stations. It's probably more like your classic university stations. And it was very interesting to hear that a lot of the people that were on there weren't really, I wouldn't say radio voice kind of people. The other thing is, if you're a really good speaker and you don't every now and again, you don't stop, you don't pause too long, you're a great speaker, but you don't have a nice voice. I wonder what is the...
Yeah.
I don't know. I wonder what's the coin toss there.
Yeah, because, if you're fluent and you know what you want to say, but the way that you carry it over to some other people or whoever's listening is irritating, or there's a pitch, or you've got like a mannerism, or you slur a bit in your speech. Yeah, that is quite a challenging one. But the other thing about what makes radio interesting is you also need to read. Because what they also did as part of this test that I had to do is you had to do a news bulletin unprepared. So you walk in, they play the news jingle, and you start reading. And you had to read traffic. But the traffic report was in English in the South Afrikaans station. So I had to direct translate traffic.
On the fly.
On the fly. So
Sure.
off-ramp.
The off-ramp.
Yeah, so it's that...
What's the off-ramp?
Okay.
Of the Indian.
So, I mean, stuff like that you wouldn't necessarily think, but also a lot of the times when people are on radio, either it's interviews or they read some interesting things that they do. So, yes, ability to communicate, very, very important as well, but you also need to know what you're saying. So, I don't know, it's an interesting question that you ask about the coin toss between being a good speaker, but the instrument itself, not so good. I don't know. Interesting.
Let's talk about church. Let's talk about your maybe just your feeling about church. Let's start with an easy one. If I say the word church, what is the picture that comes to mind, whether that's like true or not?
Okay. Early morning, because we go to church in the morning. The smell of coffee, people chatting, and someone who teaches. If that makes sense.
Okay.
It's not necessarily a chronological order, but that's the first. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Early morning coffee, people chatting,
Yeah.
teaching. All right, that's cool. Has your view on church changed over time? Has that always been the way that you saw church?
No, definitely not. I think also as I, let me not speak on someone else's behalf. As you mature as a person, first of all, and also as a Christian, some other things start coming up. So usually my view was on church when I was in school still. It's on a Sunday, you go to church, you go to the, see now, yeah, I'm stumbling again. What's the, like this little classes you got after church?
School.
Yeah, Sunday school.
Yeah.
So you had Sunday school, and then you go and watch the 8 o'clock mid movie. So you have to be in time. So that was more like a tick list approach. Also for me, I got saved very early on in my life. So from an early age, church had a different view. But also being saved doesn't necessarily only change your view on church.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Which
That's
I think is vital. Otherwise, church is only for the saved people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so you've actually made some music before. You were in a worship band team that actually won a Guma for was it best song or best original?
Best gospel album.
Best gospel album, which
Yeah.
is, I mean, wow.
Yeah.
That's South African Music Awards, right?
Yeah.
And tell us about that. Tell us how did you get into that, and what is it that you guys were doing?
So just maybe a quick correction, because I said yes quite quick. It's not a Sama. It was the Gumas. So
I
it's
said
the
Guma.
Oh, I thought you said Sama, because I mean to win a Sama is quite massive.
Oh, is that
we didn't
massive?
win a Sama.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were part of a band. It started off as a joke. To be blatantly honest, we were on a first year camp in my third year. And we were a bunch of friends. So one of the guys I met 2008, and he was like, "Hey man, we've got this camp, putting a band together. Do you want to join? 5 days a week. We play PlayStation afterwards. Food's free, and we do we do 2 worship sets, one in the morning, one in the evening. Great." I was like, "Yes, in all day." And the room that we stayed in, it was a hall, but in Afrikaans, a hall is saal. So the saal had 28 rooms, and we stayed in the first room, being directly behind the stage, which was S1. So when the guy who presented the camp was like, "Hey, I'm going to call the band, and what's the band's name?" We were like, SN. I was just pointing to a sign. And then we were like, "Okay, cool, guys, now we're in a band." So we did that 3 years running, but we were all scattered across various churches from Pretoria, Joburg, different denominations as well. So it was quite an interesting turn of events. And then I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, 4.5 years later, we were like, "Hey guys, okay, let's actually record an album." We obviously finished it. And we, as a joke, again said, "Okay, let's enter this for the Gumas." And we got chosen into the round of 10, into the round of 5, and then eventually on the evening we were in the top 3, and then we won.
Sure.
Which was insane. We couldn't believe it. And since the whole lockdown pandemic thing, the Gumas have not returned as yet. So technically, we are still the
reigning
defending,
champions.
the reigning champions for the best gospel album 4 years in a row.
There we go. Well done.
Thanks.
That's awesome. So tell me, if you are in a gospel band, I don't know if that's the correct term. When I think gospel, I see like a church choir and I hear
Hymns.
like hymns and full-blown Southern Baptist vibes. So when you're part of a team like that, a band, a gospel, where do you go? Where do you play? Do you have shows on open fields? Do you go to churches? How do you do that?
So that's quite the interesting one, because technically, when I say, let me rephrase. So yes, the only places that you can play for that specific type of music is churches. So whether it's a youth service, whether it's a Sunday service, that's where majority of the places that we played at took place on a Sunday, and it was either Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon. Again, one of the dilemmas that we faced was, okay, can we call this a show? Because remember, worship is not a show. But we were like, yes, but we're a band. Come in. So is it a gig? No, it's not a gig. Okay. Do we do worship sets then? So to just get the phrase of that correct, eventually we decided, let's just call it a show. It's just easier. We are a band. So that was where majority of that took place. And also, if you invite someone into a moment of worship during a church service, because that's one part and one aspect of a service, it's difficult to just play your new songs, because now you're inviting someone in, but they don't know the songs yet. So the idea was to actually get some new Afrikaans songs in, because there weren't a lot of Afrikaans worship songs going on at that point. There were bands here and there, but the biggest name was Retief, and he didn't have an album for quite a while, and that was the gap that we tried to fill. Also some fresh sounds, a little bit of POC. That's a new genre, punk rock.
There we
POC,
go.
there you go.
Good.
So a bit of pop tunes, punk tunes, rock tunes, because we all had a different flavor. But yes, the places that we played at were churches. Some would be saying, come to our youth service. Other people would say, listen, come to our morning service. One church, actually, in fact, we did 3 services the one Sunday. So
Wow.
2 morning services and the evening service. Old school, little bit of the younger crowds with the kids, and then the children in the evenings as well. So that was quite a dynamic. So in the morning you tuck your shirt in. Second service it would be like, okay, you can now, take off the tie, and then in the evening you can actually wear your Straatligkinders shirt if you really want
There
to.
we go.
So yeah,
Awesome.
which was quite fun.
So you traveled around a lot. You did a lot of shows. You did a lot. What is it about church that you saw that was maybe not a good thing?
Sure. So one of the first things that comes to mind is how people rely on you as a band to come in and change their whole setup. So okay, tonight we've got this band coming in, so our children's going to have a new encounter, and then from then they're going to be different.
Sure.
So as if we were sort of like a toolbox, and we were coming in with various tools, quickly fix your service, and then we move along again, which was never the intention. It was, we're a worship band that travels. So that was one of the first things, is that people sort of relied on us to kickstart the youth again. And it was just like, well, what are you doing here? Because also what's important to mention is some of the 2 other guys that were in the band were in full-time ministry.
Sure.
So the one was a reverend, the other guy had a music ministry that he ran. So they would engage in a lot more conversation with them. And then afterwards, obviously, we would debrief and say what's going on. So I think that would be one of the first things, is you got all these churches and, oh, it's great, and the people are so friendly. But if you actually just have a little bit of a conversation, you realize it's not that healthy. It's not as healthy as you would think, or what the face value would look like. So again, to link back to what you said earlier, to save face, put on this whole facade, and, oh, it's so great to have you guys here, but do the kids actually understand what we're doing?
Mhm.
Or are they just here because it's a task? Sunday's church, tick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good comment. I want to come back to a phrase you used. You were saying, talking about health of a church. Now, I'm definitely not expecting of you to be a church surgeon, but if you had to look at a church, what would you deem healthy? What would you say? This is what makes a church healthy if churches do X, Y, Z.
So for me, it would be if they all actually love Jesus, have a relationship with Jesus, because that ties into every single aspect of life. So it's not just someone greeting you friendly because, oh no, I've got a relationship with Jesus. No, when you are in a relationship with Jesus and you truly believe that He saved you, you have to be different. Something else has to change. And a lot of the times, unfortunately, there can be a lot of window dressing. So everything looks healthy. But for me, it would be, there's something tangible when you walk into a place and you're like, this is a healthy church versus, I don't know if I can say that. Can I say that?
You can say whatever you want. The mic is yours.
So, because it can be very judgmental, but there's something different that you experience. You can hear from what they teach. And again, I don't have a degree in theology, so I can't say look at their theology. But you can listen to the message. Is it centered around a preacher or is it centered around Jesus? That's the big difference. And then the congregation will also act more, obviously, on what they hear. So for me, that would be one of the big things to look at, definitely.
That's great. That's awesome. Remember that coffee shop we went to a couple of days ago?
Yeah.
So that I was having a chat with the same barista, and this morning, and we were talking. Just it was actually just I was asking him, is he in the church nearby, and I saw that me asking that question, he immediately he was ready for me. So he had like scripted answers, and I could see immediately. It's like, of all of the people that you could have this conversation with,
why me?
Don't have it with this guy, right? And but he was having a whole thing about just how he does believe in Jesus and he does love Jesus, but church is not for him. So you said now, one of the criteria that you would judge a church on, or not you would judge a church on, one of the criteria that you would look at and you'd say, this is an important thing for church, this is what will help a church, is to love Jesus and to have a relationship with Him. Is it possible for me to love Jesus and have a relationship with Him, but not be a churchgoer?
Yes, if you're stranded on the island of Antarctica or the landscape of Antarctica and there's no people around. If you are in a city like Pretoria, no. Jesus surrounded Himself with people. Yes, some of His time that He spent on earth, He went away alone and He prayed, or He was, in the desert for 40 days. But He chose people. He surrounded Himself with people. So part of loving Jesus, having a relationship with Him is, okay, well, how did He live? Because I want to live more like that. Not a works-based thing, but you want to model something different because something is different. So at that point in time, I would say no. Because how can you then tell me from that point of view that you are a full-blown believer, you have a relationship, but no one is there to actually share that with you, first of all. Second of all, to hold you accountable to what you have communicated. And thirdly, why do you want to do that? From me, a people's person, asking that. Because that's where, like I said as well, if people love each other the way that Jesus loved them, or if they try, why would you not want to be there?
That's good. Tell me about, I think you quite like accountability, or I don't know if it's because you like it or because you believe in it. And so do you think accountability is an important part of, I guess, church or community of believers, or do you think it's an important aspect?
Definitely. And I think also accountability has become somewhat of a Christianese word. Journey, seasons, all of those things. Throw that in there as well. And a lot of the times, especially for me, and I'm talking from a man's point of view, it's about lust. or it's about pornography, or it's about no accountability as well. My wife and I would often chat, and I would be like, if someone were to see me steering down this road of this friend that we are now talking about, and I'm sharing my concerns, I would want someone to come to me and say, hey man, I know that you think this is the right way to go now, but you have communicated to me before that this is not something that you just want to do out of your own power. You believe that God provides and that you want to model a life similar to what Jesus has lived. So where you're heading now is straight into your own, out of your own power, out of your own thoughts, because you're the greatest guy and you're going to be the savior of that. I want to call you back to what you communicated to me. So it's not someone saying, being an accountable judge, marking you with a sheet. It's, you told me this before, so I'm holding you to what you told me to live that life. Bringing me back to your question is, if you're on your own, how do you ever think you're out of line? Yes, the Holy Spirit can convict you, 100%, but I don't think it's the best way to live a life on earth. We weren't made to be. We spoke about, or you mentioned, it takes a village to raise a child. Why would you not want to be a part of the village?
It's a good question. It's a good question.
Think about that wherever you are now, driving, sitting. I think it's important.
Yes, I think it's important. I also realize that we as people, although we think of it as something good and we deem it as something that's appropriate or valuable, what we as people do, if just in the way we act is different, is we want to be our own people. We want to have our own opinions. We want to, recently had a conversation with someone again, and we were just talking, and they exclaimed by saying, that's just my opinion. You don't have to believe the same as me, but that's my opinion. And I was thinking again on when somebody says that, what is it that they're truly communicating? Is it this is what I believe, and I'm not willing to change, and I'm not willing to mold, and I'm not willing to how did you get to that conclusion? Was it all by yourself, or was it because of vigorous conversation? And why is your opinion so strong and so set? I wouldn't say strong, I would say set.
Yeah.
And it's probably because people want to be on their own. They want to stand strong. I mean, we know this phenomenon is not a new thing. It's always been that way. People view things through their own lenses. They interpret things through their own things. I mean, we what was it now? A couple of years ago, 2018, the word of the year was selfie, right? And so and it was the new word of the dictionary, new dictionary word, selfie. And think about explaining that in 100 years' time.
Yeah.
Like if I had to explain the word selfie to someone 100 years from now, say, well, it's when you take a picture of yourself, but you are taking the picture. And it's by yourself, for yourself, of yourself.
Sure, yeah.
And then you send it to others.
Yeah.
And then here is a little bit of me.
Yeah.
Taken
by me, of me, for me, but now I'm sharing it with you as well.
Yes. You didn't ask for it.
Yeah.
Said no one. But suddenly, here's a... And so people don't even send it to people anymore. They would post it online, and so in some way, they're sending it to everyone. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like I've never taken a selfie.
Yeah.
But think about the vanity involved.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
But is it vain, though? Is it vanity, or is it insecurity? If I was good enough just with what I had, I don't have to compensate. I'm good with what I've got. Think about the phenomenon, and I don't want to jump too far ahead now, but think about the phenomenon of somebody buying a very fancy car, or in South African terms, a really, really expensive bakkie.
Yeah.
And they all and it's the same bucky, and everyone has the same, and it's the same color, and it's the same, everyone. And you've got one, and you've got one. I was at a braai the other day, and people were talking about buckies, and they were talking about these two brand names and playing them off from one another. And the one guy's driving this, and the other guy's driving this, but the price is this, but the this, and the talk, and the this.
Yeah.
And a long conversation, and I mean, fair enough. It's a bunch of guys, so guys talk about these things. It's not wrong to talk about it, but just for a moment, I was just wondering, how is it that all of you are driving this particular bucket? Why? What are you? What is it communicating to you? What is it saying about you?
Yeah.
That if you did not have it, that would not be said about you.
Yeah.
So, for example,
Sure.
I buy the bucky because it says I am now successful, or I have now reached, adulthood. If I do not have that bucky, and I've got some tiny bucky or tiny car, does that take away what I am, who I am? I sat in the car 2 days ago. I was talking to a guy, and he was telling me how he's always afraid of driving near people with big cars, like big buckies or big jeeps or big, because he says there's a how do you say, there's an attitude that comes with it.
Yeah.
And so when there's a person like that driving in front of you or pressing you from behind, or there's an attitude that comes with it, there's a personality that comes with it, and he says no, he just wants to steer clear from that, because those are the people that rule the world. Those are the people that they've got the most influence. They're probably the most mature, the most civilized, the most. And as I was talking to him, we were driving in my car, which is a tiny car. It's a gotta gets, and we were driving in my car. And, this is a tiny car. All other cars tower over it. And I asked him, "What do you think about me? Do you think do you think? Do you think I have the capacity to be a grown up? Do you think I have the capacity to be mature?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure. Do you have kids?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do. I've got my fourth on the way." And so I know the Gates doesn't give that away.
Yeah.
But what? Here I am, and what am I supposed to?
Yeah.
Where? And so we didn't really get to the conversation much further. But the point was that cars, and not just cars, things communicate, because there's something being said about who you are.
Yeah.
The same as what a selfie, in some senses, talk about who you are as a person. And if it's not there, does that mean that there's a hole in you? There's a hole in your soul. Yes.
It's good.
So bringing this back to church, and obviously we had the authenticity conversation a previous time. So if we are truly authentic and we're in church, it can't be built only on us. It can't be built only on what we like and love. As you said, if you are an individual and you're only alone, who then holds you accountable? Who teaches you? Who helps you? What do you talk when you read a scripture? With who do you talk? Where do you go? Do you have any conversations with people? Do you ever talk to other people about Jesus?
Yeah.
And how do you do that? How do you talk to people about Jesus as an individual, forcing them to stay individualistic?
Yeah.
Because if you are a monk on a mountain alone, are you truly doing what God is expecting of you? I don't know if you want to lean into any of that.
Well, the simple answer is no. You're not doing that. I think for me, being a monk now, so nothing else. Anyway, for me as well, it's not just. I know I said accountability first of all, but it's friendships that you form when we get together with some people who are also attending church with us. We don't go to that, and my wife and I say, "Okay, remember, this is now a church kuier, so steer clear of any political chats or sport teams. You know they're Blue Bulls, you are not.
Moenie die K-woord sê nie.
You know, all of those things. Don't go there." Okay. It's not. It's, hey, we're hanging out with a bunch of people. So I think for me as well, if you don't go to church, my, I guess, fear would be you're really going to be alone. And I don't want to be alone. Yes, there is sometimes you're like, oh, just want to be alone, and then 15 minutes go by and you feel better about yourself. But from another point of view, I don't think living a life in solitude is the best way to go about it. Like I said again, because that's not what Jesus did. He went out specifically, one, to reach people, and he built his whole ministry with people, for people, to reach more people. So to say the church is not for you, I think that's what you said earlier. That's a set opinion. But also, it would be, my question would be, but why? Do you want the run sheet on a Sunday and say, well, I want to sing this song and I want to hear this message, and we never talk about money? Because then you're choosing, I don't know if you're choosing the way that you want your faith to be built. You're choosing your religion according to your own desires. And that's not, I don't necessarily think that's something, one, that Jesus would invite you to. Because he knows all of the longings that's in your heart, the bucky that you really want to drive for whatever reason. And I think we can do a whole podcast about that, just, people attaching identity to possessions. But I think coming back to that is, God knows the longing that's in your heart, but church doesn't have to be that. Church is this is going to be very corporate, but the vehicle. How do you like that? The vehicle that was chosen. And why would there be so many verses in the Bible going on about the church, how God views the church, if church wasn't a vital and crucial role? But I think church has become a building, and we don't look at what the word says about church anymore. And I think that's the big difference.
It's good. That's good. A bit earlier, I literally Googled church. And so the first thing that jumped up for some reason was the Church of the Latter-day Saints. Which is not where we want to be right now. And then obviously just looking at church, firstly dictionary, Wikipedia, just your classic first hits. And it's interesting how many people associate church with building, with a property, a venue. I must confess, if you ask me what comes to mind, what picture comes to mind if I say church, I see my first church where I grew up in. It's a building, there's a big cross, there's a white tower, and that's what I see I guess in my mind's eye. And so I think a lot of people do view it that way. It's interesting that Scripture also actually talks about church in building terms, in the metaphor of building. However, it clarifies that people are the stones, the living stones, placed into the wall, and with the cornerstone, which is the most important stone, being Jesus, and Jesus is then the cornerstone of the church. And sometimes it talks about the church as the body. And so the metaphor of the body, and so it says Jesus is the head of the body. Jesus is or we as the people in church, we all have a little, we've got a role to play, and one person might be the hand, and the other person might be the eye, and the other person might be the ingrown toenail. But for the most part, for the most part, we all are part of the body. And the scripture is clear: is don't try to take the role of somebody else in the body. Don't wish that you could have been the eye. Don't wish that you could have seen, because that's not the part that you are supposed to play. A beautiful, I guess, scripture in the Bible is in Acts. Now, the book of Acts is a book about the church, about the early church. A great book to read if you want to know, if you are asking the question, I want to know what church is about, I want to know how was the first church. The book starts off with Pentecost, or at least where the Holy Spirit was given, and that's where church started. That's where the whole thing started. So in Acts, early in Acts 2, They talk about, and they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the breaking of bread, to the fellowship, very importantly, and to prayer. And so it's you read that sentence, and you're like, okay, now I have to go to church and I have to get a little piece of bread so that we can break it, and I need a fellowship and pray. But look at the greater picture, the greater context. Breaking of bread it alludes to people eating together.
Yeah.
We don't really eat together at church, do we?
No.
It's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
If you go to church and
Yeah.
somebody has a meal prepared for you, would that be weird?
I would love it, but that's just me. But yeah, other people would be like, oh, no, not for me, thank you.
Yeah, we'll eat after church.
Yeah. I'm not hungry. And then 20 minutes later, you sit and spur.
Exactly.
Doesn't make sense.
The apostles' teaching, which is kind of one that we would say where the sermon comes from, and then there's a teaching that happens. Yeah, and I think for the most part, people associate church with that side. Somebody bringing the word. In our church, you will not believe how many people only come in to the venue when it's the sermon, and they will skip the rest. Which I think is funny, but it's because of that idea of this is to people that is the most important part. If you had to ask any random person, what would be the most important part of church? What is the one thing that we can't take away? People would say it's the sermon. But it's funny that it only takes probably a third of the service. One other third would be if you're in a evangelical Pentecostal movement, it would be your worship, your singing, and then the other third would be things like a prayer, maybe, some announcements, some testimonies, some things like that. It's funny how we break it up into, I'd say, in thirds or in quarters, and how people can look at that and say, all right, well, there's certain parts of church that's less important. But the early church, they were doing all of these things, specifically praying as well. And then it says fellowship.
Yeah.
Now that is a weird English word because it feels like Middle Earth when we say we're fellowshipping together. But what do you hear when you hear fellowship?
Well, right now I heard an Irish guy saying fella.
Oh yeah, they are a fella.
So that was one of the cool things. I was like, okay, so that's a fella, and then a ship. So it's a bunch of friends on a ship, type thing, you know.
There we go.
So I think for me, that's my favorite part. That's like I said earlier, people chatting, having a coffee, or even if there's not coffee, it also became a thing now where coffee is vital in church. And I don't really think it's that. I think it's the element that comes with that, because some people tend to just talk a little bit more relaxed when they have got something in their hand or something to sip on, which would then be in the winters a hot chocolate or something like that. But for me, that's the part that I don't want to say look forward to the most, but what I really truly enjoy. Yes, sermon is important, but so is the music, so is the testimony, so is the announcement, so is everything else. I think also what I want to challenge people on is have an experience and an encounter in all three of those aspects.
Sure.
Listen to someone's testimony and let their faith that they shared with you, in that maybe it's a situation where they were obedient, they prayed for someone, or they gave money to someone, or some crazy guy gave his car away, and let that encounter you. The other time, go for the music. Listen to the songs. Think about the word that you're saying. I always put a lot of emphasis on that. It's not just songs that we sing. It's not, in preschool, okay, now during the day we've got activiteiten and some things that we have to do. So singing is part of it. No, it's words that you're proclaiming and that you are worshiping God who sits on the throne. It's massive.
Yeah.
So that's why sometimes there's a worship service, but people tend to say, oh, worship service, nah, that ain't for me, dog. I'm out.
Yeah.
Okay, but why? So I think for me, that would be one of the, if you were to ask me what part can you take out, I would just say, I'm not going to answer this question because I don't know, because every single thing plays a part. but you also have to be open to the process of what is the is proceedings the correct word? The proceedings on a Sunday. What does that look like? And are you okay if you're not in control?
Mm.
Because then you can't dictate where it goes. You
Yeah.
actually just so that's some of my favorite Sundays to attend. Is I'm just a person in the congregation. I just pitch up. Don't have to worry about anything. And I think people need to do that, especially when you get to the point that no, church ain't for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if we are truly honest with ourselves, when you start looking at why not church, why not go to church, why you find that there are deeper things,
Yeah.
the deeper reasons for not going. It's not so much because church in and of itself was wrong,
Yeah.
but I guess for a lot of people it's quite painful. For myself, I know that I got hurt in church, more than once, in more than one church, in different churches. Got hurt by situations, got hurt by, I guess, doctrine, got hurt by leaders. Many times got hurt by commentary, got hurt by relationships and relationships that broke. When somebody is hurt in church, it's not because the building hurt them. It's because a relationship is hurt.
Yeah.
A relationship got hurt. It's a relational break. So
Yeah.
no one ever just leaves a church for no reason. People leave church because of relational breaks. And I think a lot of people that might say, I want to believe in Jesus, I want to be a Christian, but church is not for me.
Mm.
That is a interesting thing how you said it earlier, how it's the vehicle Jesus chose. Yeah, it's the one that he put in place for life. He literally talks about church. The gates of hell will not overcome it.
Sure.
Talking about the church. On this rock I will build my church. He speaks to Peter, which is a beautiful. Maybe not go into that right now, but this idea where Petros and Petra meaning rock and Petros meaning smaller rock, and so he would have to do this word play.
Oh wow.
But you Petros, and on this I will build my Petra, which is this
Sure.
beautiful way of speaking. But the long and the short is that it's not on Peter that the church was built, but it was on the revelation that Jesus is the Son of God.
Sure.
And I know this might be unfair, and so forgive me if this might come across as offensive, but I think that if the church is built upon the revelation that Jesus is the Son of God, if I reject church in some way, I am saying no to that revelation.
Sure.
Even if it's only in part.
Mm.
I might believe it in my heart, but in part I'm saying, yes, give me some of that, but not all of it. I don't want the community. I don't want the people. I don't want this. I don't want that.
Yeah.
I think that's quite dangerous.
Sure. But also, just to quickly add on there, is okay, now I sit there and I feel that way, and now you've offended me with what you said. Now the great thing is, within the community of church, you can go and say, listen, this is the way that I always thought about it. How can someone help me, or how can someone guide me to believe this in the correct way that it was actually intended? Because if you isolate it on your own, you're never going to tell yourself you were wrong.
Mm.
That's the beauty. You
Yeah.
can actually have that.
Yeah. And sometimes, you know what, is when you are isolated, you find people that believe the same way you believe.
Yeah.
And so what is the cancer of change? What is the thing that breaks all I guess good opinions is immoldability. It's when you say I cannot be moldable. My opinion is so strong it cannot change. But the problem is that a strong opinion comes because of moldability. It comes because somebody can mold. But if everyone around me is somebody that agrees with me, my opinions aren't molded. They're not changed. They're not made strong by years and years of resistance. They just powdered up. They're just polished.
Yeah.
And I guess we want people around us to believe different.
Mm.
I don't mean at the core of belief, and I'm not saying
Yeah.
go find somebody that completely is different than you and doesn't compliment you. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that every now and again, you need to hear the other side of the story,
Yep.
the other side of another way of thinking. I was just thinking about that the other day, about the Springbok rugby team, just in preparation for our World Cup. They sent out the team, and here's the 33-man squad, and reading through that and just going through it, I'm thinking, yo, this is so ridiculous. Why is this happening? And so I start watching and listening to podcasts on some of the people that know, and some of the people that, and wow, I'm just so, I guess in some sense humbled now, if offended them then, but humbled now, because of people that don't believe like me, don't talk like me, they don't see the things that I see, they see it in a different way, and by listening and by opening up and by being open to maybe, I guess, correction.
Yeah.
Moldable.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, that's you saying, okay, I'm not a know-it-all. So let me listen to what someone else has to say. But if you're on your own, you're always going to believe that you should have actually been the coach.
Yeah.
And to choose the squad that goes. So right there, yes. And it might... I'm not saying you'll always be wrong, but sometimes there's someone who can just nudge you in the right direction or show you a new perspective. But again, how are you going to do that if you don't enter into conversation? Because you listening to that podcast or doing something else is technically inviting that person in and say, listen, what do you think about this? Oh, here's some wisdom that's being imparted. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that wisdom is maybe not because of somebody just being wise. It's because of a life lived, life spent, time spent, experiences that I will never have. Yeah. There might be a guy that was actually a Springbok, and he has an opinion. And then here I sit and I'm like, I wasn't,
Yeah.
Sure, there's an experience there that it's not just I need to hold out and wait for myself to get that experience. No, I'm never going to have that experience.
Yeah.
It's not reserved for me.
Mm.
And so this person speaks out and says, hey, well, this is what I think. And I'm like, wow, that's coming from you. That's such a great commentary. AJ, as we end, maybe just give us a brief opinion just on what should people be looking for in a church that's good? Yes, let's maybe.
So I think, or it's actually something my wife and I spoke about last couple of months, just in the phase of life that we're in now. But people, first off, what should people look for is people, fellow believers, see how the word fellowship, huh? That's just the penny that dropped in my mind now. So people who can do this walk of life with you. People that's got the same hunger for Jesus, that's got the same hunger for change, that's got the same hunger to be molded and to be changed and to be made better by pursuing Jesus in that way. So it's not always, I'm not saying go and look for the high and mighty and holy people, because you're not going to find them, because people can't be that in and out of their own. What I'm saying is people who share the same interest in becoming more like Jesus and who want to do life together. People that want to be part of the village that raises the child. And I'm not saying your immediate neighborhood, but hey, maybe that's a good place to start. The classic thing that people also say is, do you know your neighbor? Have you ever spoken to them?
Yeah.
Well, have you? I can say that I have, yes. I know all of the people that live around me, because that's just me. Hey, I'm new. I'm AJ. This is my wife, Laka. Why not do that at church? Why come to church and be like, oh, someone just please don't talk to me. I'm a visitor. I really want that chocolate, but I'm not going to put up my hand. Because then someone's going to want to form a relationship. Well, why is that so bad?
Yeah.
If there's past hurt, and I've also had hurts in church, because people are still sinners. We need to remember that. And I always want to believe the best of people, but yes, people are gonna hurt you. It's the same. People hurt you at work, but that's not that big a deal. It's fine. But in church, I'm never going back there. You can't say that about your job. No, I'm not going back to work on Monday.
Yeah.
No, you're gonna go. You're gonna suck it up, and you're gonna move on. Or you're gonna have the conversation. Why not in church? Why not put your hand up? Why not walk across and say, "Hey, listen, I'm so and so." It's gonna be awkward the first time. Maybe it's not. Maybe you meet your new best friend. Maybe you meet your future husband or your wife. I don't know.
Yeah.
Someone who's got a similar interest. So people is good in church. People pursuing the word of Jesus. People teaching the word of Jesus. People worshiping together. It's good.
Good. It's great. I think that there's a side to church also is almost the outward thinking of, yes, we're a community and we are people that fellowship and we're together and we love one another and we want to stimulate health with inside. But on the other side, we also want to go fetch people. We want to go get people. We want to people that are not there. Because I think that's a part of just maybe the experience of church that people sometimes I guess neglect because it's scary, but also miss out on is going and fetching someone else.
Yeah.
So there's one side to, yes, do you know your neighbor? Yes, you really need to know your neighbors.
Yeah.
If you don't know your neighbor, go learn your neighbor's name.
Yeah.
But more than that is, if you had the opportunity to tell your neighbor the most important thing in this life, would you do it? Would you be able to? Do you have the relationship?
Yeah.
And so maybe start there. Church is a beautiful thing. It's an interesting thing, and so we are concluding this series just on authentic church community. And I know we had a lot of conversations and a lot of talks, and we have some sermons that also accompany this podcast. If you want to go listen to them under our Spiritual Family sermon series. Lot to be said, lot to venture into, but in the end, the best thing to do is to come back to Jesus, come back to what God is saying, come back to how He was portraying life. What was Jesus busy with? This is what you said, Ajay. You said, well, Jesus he had people around him. He was in people's homes eating. He was he was walking on the street and speaking to people and healing people, and things were happening. There was community of people. Jesus was never on his own, or at least known for doing things on his own for long periods of time, because it wasn't the point. And here's the kicker. If we believe that God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit are one, and that there's a Trinity, there's three persons in one, it means that the very concept of relationship already existed without any humans present.
Sure.
Because God already had a perfect relationship. And so, love. God saying, I am love. You can't love without another. Was there a point where there was not love? No. There always was love, because there always was one more than one. And so even within the Godhead, even within the Trinity, there's this community, there's this relationship, there's this, And I think that is amazing.
Yeah.
Last thoughts?
Can you imagine how sad it would have been if Jesus became human, roamed the earth and said, yeah, no, the people ain't for me. I'm just going to roam about my own thing. How sad would that have been? None of us would be saved.
We wouldn't know about him, would we?
So, if you believe in him, I think my one question that I would just want to ask rhetorically is, why do you want to do this life on your own? And I'm not saying church is the answer to that, but I think it's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Get involved.
It's good.
Go through the awkward silences, let it simmer, meet the people that you're like, okay, I'm never going to speak to these people again, and then 6 months later you're having dinner with them on a Sunday. How amazing is that? Have the conversations. Go for it.
All good stories end with dinner.
100%.
Thank you, AJ, for joining us
Lekker.
and just depositing some of your life experiences. A good molded, or let's say a good strong opinion is one that is molded, and so great to have you here with us, knowing that you're open to the moldability of life, but also just experiencing life authentically and trusting God and trusting the Holy Spirit and all of those things. We definitely don't know everything about church and everything there is to know, but I think as we have these conversations more and more, we realize just how it's almost like there's a mind behind it. It's almost like somebody's planning this. It's almost like somebody's in control.
Yeah,
and
it's good.
And that just gives me great comfort. Thank you for listening in, friends. We are going to continue with our We Should Talk podcast and have some awesome new topics coming up and some good chats. It's going to be good. Be blessed, and we'll talk again.
Lekker. Goodbye.